mean, if he can connect for sure, but being wild and all tense and... Okay, he's just gone for a headbutt. No.
Some answers in between rounds.
Constantly moving onto Williams' right hand, and then the referee takes one at the end.
Took one on the end there.
Right where?
Yeah, but he's turned away. He's
turned
not
his back.
wanting this.
I don't think he wants to be in there.
He's already dead.
I don't think he needs.
It's undeniable that influencer boxing has become a global spectacle, often surpassing its professional counterparts in the revenue and attention it generates. Eddie Hearn stated in an interview in August 2022 that KSI's rematch with Logan Paul sold 2 million pay-per-views, placing it in the top 5 highest selling fights in history. This places it ahead of fights such as Mike Tyson against Lennox Lewis and roughly on par with Floyd Mayweather's bout with Canelo Alverez. Some would say that it has revived the boxing arena, particularly in a time where the sweet science has seemed to stagnate. We now consistently see the best boxers ducking and dodging the best through deploying unreasonable stances, allowing greedy promoters to get their claws in, and outright ignoring the calls for a bout to be organised. Not only has the introduction of influencers into the boxing ring galvanised support amongst a younger fan base, it has also cultivated huge spectacles in arenas across the world, ranging from the O2 in London to the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Influencers have publicly expressed desires to enter the ring, purely for financial gain.
What would make you accept this fight against Deji? Money?
And this perhaps uncovers the massive sums of money that are connected and available from the rise of this bizarre trend. But what started off as a light-hearted game in which opponents would sport thick headguards and wildly flail their limbs at one another, hoping to land a sizable blow, has rapidly devolved into a farcical circus act. With the original grumbles of boxing purists gradually coming to fruition, we have been exposed to an assortment of shocking events, including breakdowns in discipline, outright cheating, and long-lasting damage. Letting amateurs enter the ring has unfortunately unearthed the sinister side of a sport which has gripped the public for over a century, and now that the genie is out of the bottle, the tide is likely irreversible. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this content, guys, so that I know to make more of it. Anyways, let's go right back to the beginning, where this all started, in a dingy gym in Brighton.
Alright, here it is. It's YouTube's first ever big boxing fight. Joe Weller, Theo Baker, idols become rivals. Looking to land that big punch, and he does so! Weller is just laying into him. He won't be stopped.
It's an accuracy and 2 standing counts. Winner, Joe.
Now, as the champion of boxing on YouTube, I am calling out for anyone that is brave enough to take me on.
What started as some harmless fun between two friends quickly spiraled into something far bigger. After some fiery exchanges and a memorable press conference, Joe Weller fought KSI at the Copper Box Arena on the 3rd of February 2018. After a convincing win for KSI in which he battered and bludgeoned Weller for 3 brutal rounds, KSI said something that would cause the trend to explode into a global phenomenon.
Jake Paul, Logan Paul, any of the Pauls, I don't care, bring it.
After a back and forth exchange involving some cringeworthy videos, KSI was scheduled to fight Logan Paul on the 25th of August 2018 in Manchester Arena. After an even matchup which saw an early Paul onslaught followed by a strong KSI finish, the bout was scored as a draw. The rematch took place over a year later on the 9th of November 2019 in Los Angeles. This fight was produced and promoted by Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing in partnership with Sky Sports and the sports streaming service DAZN. Hearn would later state that it was the biggest pay-per-view of 2019, surpassing fights such as Anthony Joshua against Andy Ruiz. This was clearly the point that influencer boxing was cemented as a staple of boxing's future. On the 30th of January 2020, Jake Paul staked his claim to the influencer boxing crown by beating Anison Gibb, a somewhat respected fighter who had fought on various undercards in KSI's bouts. He would then go on to beat Nate Robinson in November 2020, sleeping him convincingly. The fight reportedly sold 1.5 million pay-per-view buys, but Paul was simply fighting on an undercard as Roy Jones Jr. against Mike Tyson was the main event. Jake Paul's biggest pay-per-view fight came in April 2021 when he fought the former MMA fighter Ben Askren. The event accrued a total of 1.5 million pay-per-view buys and generated $75 million in profit, making it the 12th largest pay-per-view fight ever, equaling Mayweather against Cotto. On the 6th of June 2021, we finally saw a crossover of the influencer and professional spheres when Logan Paul fought Floyd Mayweather. The fight sent shockwaves through both social media and the mainstream media. Nobody ever believed that a YouTuber would take on arguably the greatest boxer of all time. The fight was not officially scored by judges, but ESPN scored the bout 78-74 in favour of Mayweather. Only 6 days later, on the 12th of June 2021, the Battle of the Platforms took place, hosted by Social Gloves at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. The prevailing premise of the event revolved around the notion of YouTubers fighting TikTokers, boasting sizable matchups including Austin McBroom against Bryce Hall and Anison Gibb against Taylor Holder. Although the event sold 135,000 pay-per-view buys, it was considered a major commercial failure as it cost $20 million to produce but only generated between 6.5 and 10 million in total. Some saw this result as an indication of the influencer boxing trend stagnating. After all, it was just a fad, a temporary craze, right? This view seemed to be corroborated by Jake Paul against Tyron Woodley 2, which was reported to have sold only 65,000 pay-per-view buys, representing a major drop-off from the memorable influencer bouts of the preceding years. It seemed that the enjoyment of watching two low-quality fighters slugging it out in the ring in the hope of landing a lucky right hook to the temple was beginning to wear thin, or so the boxing purists thought. Having been on the anvil since early 2021, the Jake Paul against Tommy Fury bout garnered widespread support but was fraught with complications from the outset. With the fight originally scheduled to take place in December 2021, Fury would pull out of the clash with a rib injury and chest infection. The second meeting was scheduled for August 2022.
Crying over you. Boom. Rest in peace.
Yet this failed to materialise because of Fury's US visa issues. Finally, on the 26th of February 2023, the fight took place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The fight was fairly exciting, with 8 relatively intense rounds playing out. It was later disclosed by the MVP co-founder Nakisa Bidarian that the bout surpassed 800,000 pay-per-view buys globally, a very respectable figure. Granted, one of the participants was deemed to have come from outside the influencer boxing sphere, but the fight underlined a continued desire from much of the public for the trend to continue. It's obviously speculation, but the famed potential fight between KSI and Jake Paul would be likely to garner a substantial number of pay-per-view buys and generate overall revenue, but only time will ultimately tell. So why exactly is influencer boxing spiralling out of control? I for one welcomed the arrival of it, occasionally buying pay-per-view, which I've just somehow admitted on the internet. Anyways, there are a number of obvious problems and dangers that have recently arisen. Firstly, in order to put one night only influencer events on, they must be licensed, and these permits are issued by regional associations on behalf of England Boxing directly. And I believe it's a similar system in the US. However, the flood of YouTuber and TikTok bouts in the UK has appeared to lower the threshold in order to secure a license. Consequently, unsafe and dangerous fights have taken place which should have never been allowed. Take the Kingpin boxing event held on Saturday the 16th of July 2022, in which Ed Matthews took on Simple Simon. Matthews was 19 at the time, with a strong physique and relatively good boxing ability, while Simple Simon was 52 and seemed completely out of his depth. Simon was laid flat on the canvas within just over a minute, and fortunately he wasn't left seriously hurt. In the same night, Luke Bennett fought Dean LM. Well, fought is probably an overstatement. The Boxing Commission should never have allowed such amateurs to enter the ring, particularly without headguards. Secondly, we have witnessed an increased breakdown in discipline between many of the influencer fighters. During a fight in May 2022, Ryan Taylor was disqualified for a blatant headbutt on his opponent, DK Money. Meanwhile, in a recent bout, reality TV star and American football player Chase Damore caused a riot after he kept punching his opponent, YouTuber Stevie Knight, whilst he lay on the floor. This is obviously completely against the fundamental rules of boxing. In some of the early influencer fights, we would also see bizarre WWE style takedowns. And this begs the question as to why the rules aren't as stringently followed. The majority of these influencers are amateurs, and some probably don't fully comprehend the boxing rules and regulations. Yet for the ones that do, they are far more willing to push the boundaries and act out of emotion. Ultimately, a disqualification and ban from the ring isn't nearly as damaging on their careers as it would be for a professional fighter. After all, they are simply fighting for a quick paycheck as opposed to it being their livelihood. It's far riskier for a fighter who relies upon the sport as their primary source of income to act out in the ring. They don't have the luxury of influencers. Thirdly, in attempts to make more sales, it seems that the promoters and organisers are willing to endorse dangerous and often silly concepts in the ring. In March 2023, tag team boxing premiered at the DAZN X 005 event. This was met with a significant level of disdain and anxiety amongst much of the boxing community. As the Wade concept rightly stated,
because as a combat sports commentator, I have seen things tried like multiple man fights in MMA where guys get absolutely battered with their head turns and caved in. So of course I was concerned when I heard tag team boxing.
And it poses a serious risk to the boxer's health. Although the rules put out by DAZN include a provision that a fighter cannot attempt to tag during a period of engagement, only during a period of inactivity, it still seems slightly unconvincing. The possibility remains that someone could get clocked in the back or the side of the head as they seek to pass over the baton. Granted, this is yet to happen in the tag team's short history. It just seems that entertainment is taking priority over health at this point. Granted, it is pretty entertaining though, so I'd be glad to hear your guys' thoughts on this concept. On balance, I do feel that influencer boxing has had a more positive impact upon the sport than a negative one. It has garnered unprecedented support and made the activity more accessible to the masses. The earliest recordings of boxing date back to over 5,000 years ago to stone carvings in ancient Egypt, and it's great to see that in this modern age we're still obsessed with this timeless tradition. Yet, the one truly worrying trend is the increasing abandonment of the Marquess of Queensberry's rules, which cemented the official guidelines of the sport in 1867. Deriving heavily from a code of chivalry, the 12 laws asserted that there would be no wrestling, no other people allowed in the ring during rounds, and that a man on one knee is considered down and if struck is entitled to the stakes. Through a gluttonous desire to entertain, integrity may suffer.